Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, friends of the art of the Japanese print. Welcome for another edition of our video productions by Artelino. What is Artelino? The Artelino company sells Japanese art prints in weekly online auctions, and therefore we make these videos, of course. And who is me? Well, my name is Dieter Vanschura, and I'm the owner and manager of the Artelino company. Today's video is about a little bit a tricky subject. I titled it Dating of Japanese Prints, and it refers mainly to woodblock prints of the 19th century. I want to start with an email that we received by one of our clients during one of our recent auctions. And afterwards, I want to quote our answer. This explains a little bit the problem that is behind the word dated and, well, the solution or the possible solutions. Well, I start now quoting this email from one of our clients. The info for this print states it was printed in 1926, but also states a posthumous printing. Also, it appears signed. Can you explain these inconsistencies? Question mark. Now comes our answer. Actually, it's not my answer. The answer came from Yori, my Japanese wife, because she's much, much better. She's the real expert. People always think, hey, this is the great guy. No, I just have an average knowledge. Okay, but it's good. Okay, when you have someone who is really good, and Yori is damn good, believe me. Okay, now comes our answer, starting the quote. This print design was first published in 1926. When you see the terminology dated in auction or gallery catalogs or book publications, it almost always refers to the date when the design was first published, not the actual printing date of the particular impression. The print which is offered in the auction was printed posthumously, as the signature is stamped, not handwritten. These stamped signatures are used after the death of the artist unless otherwise documented. End of quote. Well, the conclusion is we have two issues here. First, date published versus date printed, and hand-signed signature versus stamped signature. Well, date published is clear. That's the date when a print design came for the first time into the market with the first impressions. Date printed means when was the print pulled, the impression pulled. Could have been 50 years later after the publication date. And, well, stamped signature is something strange for a Western mind. Okay, but the Japanese publishers and artists used it in some cases. I will tell you afterwards a little bit more about it. But let's go a little bit more into detail with dated. As explained in our answer, dated is a terminology used in auction catalogs or in gallery catalogs, and Artelino also uses it in our online descriptions, and it usually always refers to the date of first published. For Japanese prints of the 19th century, this is usually well documented. For instance, by censor seals carved directly into the block. Very often you have this information. But you hardly ever have the information when a print was actually printed, the date when it was printed. Why? Quite simple. The Japanese didn't care. Well, for them it was not the places where these prints were produced. They were like printing shops, and they were print shops, yeah. They did not regard that as an artist studio where they had to document everything for the generations after them, and especially for the Western collectors at the time when they produced them. They had no idea that they would ever become subject for collecting. Well, how, nevertheless, can you roughly find out roughly when a print was actually pulled, when was the impression made, and why is it important? Quite simple. I'm talking about woodblock prints. And a woodblock print, a woodblock wears off the more impressions you pull from a wooden block. I once read there's a limitation of a maximum of 8,000 or 10,000 copies. And the more you pull, the worse becomes the printing quality. You see then broken lines and stuff like that. And collectors, of course, they want to have an early printing because then the quality is much better, and they are willing to pay much more money for a good impression, meaning an early impression. And sometimes they pay 10 times more for a good early impression than for the same design as a late impression. Got it? Yeah? Okay, which are the clues where you can roughly indicate early, late impression, maybe the year or what? Well, one clue is the quality of the paper. Then, of course, the quality of the printing, as I just said, and sometimes different colors. The first, let's say, 500 prints pulled have a sky in dark blue. And 5 years later, because the market has room for more prints to sell, the publisher pulls more impressions, and he uses a different color, slightly different. The sky is now light blue. These are indicators. You also have museum collections as a reference, which are often very well documented, and there you can sometimes see the different versions. For instance, different versions in colors. Sometimes it may also be something like a census stamp or another kind of stamp. But overall, the exact date when an impression was pulled, when a print was really printed, is subject to guesses, gut feelings, and often, I can use the word woulda, coulda, shoulda. Yeah, it's not exact. When it comes to Meiji prints, the situation is a little bit better. What are Meiji prints? Well, the Meiji period lasted from 1866 until 1912. And Meiji prints are simply prints produced during this period. And there were rather strict laws which required not only the publication date on a print, but also the printing date. However, these printing dates, they are not 100% reliable. So also here, a certain uncertain guesses, gut feelings. But for Meiji prints, much better than for Edo prints, the period before 1866. Well, let's talk about the second issue, stamped signatures versus handwritten signature. For a Western mind, a signature, you expect always, signature means hand-signed, handwritten. Yeah? There are a few cases for artists of the Shinhanga art movement. That was first half of the 20th century, roughly, where the publishers or the family used a stamp as a signature, and that looks pretty much like the real thing. But first, let me mention these artists of whom we know that stamped signatures exist. This is first Toshi Yoshida, then his father Hiroshi Yoshida, and another Shinhanga artist, Shiro Kazamatsu. There may be more, but I asked my wife this morning. She also can't remember anymore, but these are those that you will encounter most. Why? Of course, in order to publish partly posthumous prints. In the case of Toshi Yoshida, it was like this. Toshi Yoshida was very ill towards the late years of his life. He had cancer and he was too weak to hold the pen, but he still supervised the pulling of the impressions. And well, then the family used this stamp signature. But they also added a mark so an expert can recognize that whether it is handwritten or not. Well, in general, can you recognize a stamped signature from a handwritten signature? As an amateur, it's difficult. As an expert, professional, yes, no problem, yeah. But I remember when I first saw Toshi Yoshida print with a stamped signature, it looked to me like the real thing, yeah. So when you're new, my advice, rely on trustworthy experts. While in general, when it comes to Japanese prints, rely on trustworthy experts. 20 years ago, I got a good advice from a dealer in Japanese prints with a very good reputation. He is still today in business, and he told me something that I still remember. And when you're new to Japanese prints, don't forget that sentence. It goes, Japanese prints are not an exact science. Let me repeat it. Japanese prints are not an exact science, my friends. Never forget that, yeah? It explains a lot. Last conclusion. If Japanese prints are such a mess, for heaven's sake, and I've started collecting Japanese prints, what an idiot I am. I'm switching to collecting teddy bears. Well, I don't know too much about teddy bears, my friends, but I'm now in this business of Japanese prints, and also I'm a little bit familiar to other fields of art. Believe me, one thing, collecting teddy bears or jumping to another field of collecting art, it would be like out of the frying pan into the fire. Collecting art in general is not quite easy, and my advice, rely on a trustworthy expert and try to get knowledge yourself. Well, there are a lot of good books, yeah, try to learn, and that's part of the fun of collecting prints, collecting art, and especially collecting Japanese prints. It's really something great. These prints are gorgeous, are awesome, and behind each design there's a story that tells you so much. Believe me, it's fascinating. Don't change to collecting teddy bears. Well, I want to conclude now. It's time to go. Today is October 11. It's Friday, and it's a beautiful autumn weather. I cannot hear them, but I can see the Bavarian mountains from here, and it looks awesome. And I wish you a great weekend. Goodbye, my friends.